Welcome to Cancer and Peace. My name is Sean Stewart, and I'm usually here to facilitate a conversation with my good buddy Peter Scalza. But today we're going to bring a special episode where we had Dr. Rhonda Richmond, who was here for a gala that my organization puts on that Peter helps to drive every year as one of our board members. And we had a great conversation with her about a book that she had wrote, But God Gave Me a Pencil. And we think it just has so much about how to walk through a journey that I think you'll connect with how it fits into a journey of hardship also that she had. And there's just such wisdom that she brought to us. And so what we're going to do is play that recording of this interview for today's episode. And we think you're really going to enjoy this. So enjoy.
Blessings.
All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sean Stewart. I'm here with Dr. Rhonda Richmond and my good friend Peter Scalzo. And Dr. Rhonda, you just spoke at CBF's gala last night, and it's our annual fundraising gala. It's our biggest get-together of the year that our ministry has, and you were our keynote speaker, and it was exciting to have you there. I know that just listening to all the feedback we had from the event was amazing. And one of the reasons why you were invited is because you took time to write a book called But God Gave Me a Pencil. And so I want to just, dive in a touch to your background and have you tell us a little bit about yourself. But today is a little bit of just us talking, exploring your book with you, Peter and I. And my hope is that when we do this, that we just get a little bit more understanding and maybe there's going to be excitement about, what you've written. Because I got this from Gilda Gomez, which is one of your good friends and partners in crime of some type, I'm sure.
We are. I love Gilda.
And I was telling the story last night, and I laughed about it because she had reached out to me and said, hey, I'd like you to read a sample of Dr. Rhonda's writings. Can I send it to you and just to get your thoughts on it? And I was like, sure. And she sends me her review of it. I was like,
this is not it.
So I read your review. It's really nice, Gilda, but the book. But anyway, I did get a chance to read it, and I became, Peter and I, we're sitting in a library room here on the campus of CBF's office building. We're surrounded by books right now. And in the books, and Peter sits here all the time. It's like, I want to read a good story. And there's so many books here that are people just, I'm going to say the word pontificating about a subject matter.
Yeah.
But you and I long for a great story, and a story that connects at the deepest part of humanity and who we are and just captures us. And so it only took me a chapter to go, I want to read the rest. And I pushed the buy button and went right in. And the reason why is because you shared your heart and life in this book in ways that I don't think a lot of people do. And so that's why I wanted to explore, and that's why we invited you to come be at our galas, because it was such an amazing thing. Anyway, you want to add before we kick off and throw it to Dr. Rhonda?
I mean, I just love a story where there's an underdog. And if there ever was one, Dr. Rhonda had to crawl and scrape and dig her way out of lots of holes. And I just have a lot of respect and admiration for her and for her faith in the Lord too. So I love this story.
It's an incredible journey.
Yeah.
And so I'll kick it off back to you. Tell us some background about yourself and how this book came to being. How is it that you were inspired to write a book about, in many ways, it has more than just your life. It does. You didn't pontificate, but you shared a lot of concepts that you learned and things you learned along the way on your journey. And so I'll let you describe that a bit too.
Oh man. So
it's a big picture. Sorry about that.
That's a huge question.
Huge bucket, yes.
But to be fair, I didn't really think about it as just having a story. Goodness, a while back I'd worked with somebody at work. His name is Gary Ewing, Dr. Gary Ewing. He's a professor at Colorado Christian University, and he had done a life plan for somebody. And he said, Rhonda, would you like to do a life plan? I was like, yeah, Gary, I want to do a life plan. I didn't know what that entailed. I'm like, I'll do a life plan. That seems like great. I want to know what I need to be doing in my life. And so I sat down with him, and in 2 days, we looked at my life from infancy to current day. And we talked about what turning points are. Like, what is this thing that actually took your life and spin it around, and how many of you do you have? How well over 100.
Wow.
And we kind of walk through just picking through like this did this or this changed this and this changed this. And at some point he goes, "You've got a story to tell." I thought, well, that's interesting. But at the end of it, he was like, "Now how do you feel?" And I was like, "I think I have a story to tell." But I didn't share it with anybody. Like, I'm like, okay, I'll just hide that, because I was just doing that with Gary as an exercise to figure out, you know, if I'm in the right plan, the right job, all of that. Maybe a month later, Dan Streeter, who also graduated illiterate, but he's one of the best curriculum writers I know to this day. He's just amazing. He is so gifted. He and I were just talking about our stories, and he said, "Rhonda, I think you need to write a book." He said, "Matter of fact, I'm going to help you come up with an outline." And I'm like, "Dan, that's a lot." Like, the only real time I really put all those things together was doing my dissertation. And that's a lot of pages of a lot of work, but a lot of it is me just sort of talking through what other people have already thought about in relationship to a question I've been posing and some research I've done. And that's different than this is exactly what your life is looking like.
Yeah.
And Dan goes, "No, let's just think about an outline." So he actually crafted an outline and was like, "You could do this. You could do this. Write and get back to me." And I'm like, "Dan, I don't think I can do this." But within a month I just written it all out. And so I hadn't told Robbie I was on that journey at all.
Tell everybody who's Robbie?
Robbie is my husband.
Yeah, okay, just making sure. Yeah, I think I knew.
I I keep forgetting that we're doing this, but I hadn't told Robbie. I hadn't shared it, and I don't know why. I've shared everything with Robbie, but this just
Wait a second, how many pages did you write before you?
That's what I was getting to.
Okay, fine.
And I eventually said, "Rob, will you read this for me?" It was 300 to 500 pages, something like that. Just say
you
that
wrote 300 or 500 pages,
and so Robbie's reading it, and he said, "You know, honey," he's like, "I love it when you just start the memoir piece, where you're just telling me the pieces of our life and your life before we met." He said, "But there are times where you just drift off into science and drift off into what he knows to be that place where I go to, where I'm just very research driven." And he's like, "Not everybody wants that piece." And I had another friend read it, and she's like, "You got a lot of caveats that are happening. You just kind of dive into what is dyslexia. You really go deep into what dyslexia." And I'm like, I was like, "Is that a problem? I think people need to know that." And she's like, "You're the only one who wants to know that, Rhonda. You're the only one who wants to read that in a memoir." So I cut it all the way back, and I got rid of a lot of the chapters that kind of walk through like my philosophy, a little bit of the model we've talked about before about how I got the kids to start learning. And I just focused on just trying to tell the story or tell my life in a way where it was honoring to the people who've been a part of that. Like, I didn't want to share too much about my kids, because their journey's their journey. Their right to tell their story is their right. Just because I'm their mom, I don't get to just decide one day I'm going to tell pieces of their life that they are not comfortable with being out there. So that's how the story got condensed into what you see today is Robbie saying, "Take part of yourself out of that." You know, he's used to that part of myself. He laughs at it a lot, but he didn't think every reader needed to see it. So that's why it's
300 to 500 pages down to 163.
Well, so I hope Robbie listens to this. Great work, Robbie, on editing
Great work,
down. However, let me just say that your knowledge in these other fields is important. And so I think I want to affirm that in you as we've had discussions, but it's probably just contextualized that it's important to us because it really applies to the way we're doing education with youth and in the communities we're involved with. Your story, there's a concept I'm going to put out to you that I'll see how you react to it in this, and it's something that we talk about because we do something called story work. And it's a guy by the name of Adam Young says this all the time, and I just find it to be spot on the more I delve into it. It's like, your story is more interesting, more meaningful, more exciting than the best Hollywood script that's ever been written. Oh, wow. And so as I think about your story and And what we read here is like, there's no Hollywood script that compares to this. And as you get into the depths of it, it's that deep and meaningful, and it's that enthralling. And so was Peter's, and so was mine, and so was Jack's. The fact that you took time to capture it and to put it down and to let us just even share in a part of it is such like a rich, meaningful thing. And I think few people do that at the level that you've done. And so that's why this is exciting to me. But great job, Robbie, still.
Well, I think I should explain. I didn't get diagnosed with autism until I was 40.
Yeah.
And so there are times in my life where it's very apparent. Like I know a lot of people walk up to me and go, you don't seem autistic. But they don't see me when I'm alone in my private space with my husband and my kids can see it, and people who really love me are like, oh, there it is. When I wrote the book originally, the there it is was super there it is. And you could tell, like, one page I'd be just talking about the everyday life of it. And then all of a sudden you could tell you were closed into a room and you were just focused on one specific topic. And then all of a sudden we're back in the memoir. And he was like, that's jarring to a reader who's never been inside the head of somebody who has autism, who especially goes off into, I'm trying to think of the right word to call it, but sometimes the researcher in me comes out. And so then I dive into a part of the topic that I think is interesting or intriguing or important. And it is important, but it's not going to get you through the story. It's not going to get you through the parts of my life that are going to draw you into, okay, what really actually happened. It kind of takes you off tangent. And that happens just in regular life. So because he gets to see it all the time, what he actually said to me is, your autism flag is flying. Is what he said. But then he kind of was just like, honey, it's okay for people not to see all the pieces. You want them to understand where the struggle is.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of people who think, well, you have your doctorate now, so that means you've never been autistic and you're not autistic now. You outgrew it. Or they think I'm ever going to outgrow my dyslexia. If you can imagine that, like you can still spell, can't you? On occasion, absolutely. But then some days, absolutely not. Like, how did you spell the? I have done that before and just sit there and like, I know the word. It's a 3-letter word and it's got an E at the end. And Robbie's like, what? I'm like, word, E at the end. Short. It goes right here. And he's like, you mean the? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Starts with a T. Oh, I got it. Got the word. It's not because I've forgotten how to spell the word the. It's because I can't access where it is in my head, where I've put that information. And it's taken me a little longer to get there. So people think you outgrow those types of things. I don't outgrow them. I have coping mechanisms that help me through them. So I get a lot of that. And he was like, I don't want you to write the book to a point where people don't realize who you are and that these things still exist. I want you to write the book so that people understand and you don't lose them. I don't want to lose you in the middle of, the preface, so to speak. I don't want to lose you there, and then you're never going to get through the book, and we're never going to be able to engage in sort of a thoughtful conversation about these disabilities.
That's a really good share there. I think that brings some understanding that for me as somebody who reads your story, it is that, like, the meaningfulness of how you walk through the struggle. It's not just the fact that you struggled. It is how your life played out, the relationships, how God met you in the struggle, what you learned about yourself in the struggle, and the people and the things you learned in that are, or the things you learned in that are, they're not unimportant, but it's the relationships and your own life that is like the meaning of your own heart is what comes out to me in what is written in this book here, which, I think the people that heard your speech at the gala last night connected richly with, whenever I hear you talk about somebody saying, you should write a book, What did I tell you in the car ride over here today?
You did.
I told you something different though.
You did.
What was it?
You should write a sequel. Is that what he? Is that
You
how
should
he
write a
put it?
sequel. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's about your dad. And I'm going to ask that in a little bit. And I also said, hey, I think it's maybe you and I were talking about this. It's like, you should be doing some TED Talks because what you shared last night would connect with large audiences in a big way, with the level of connection with the points that you were raising last night. Our theme was I am seen, and what it really means to be seen, and how you were seen, and how you see others, how that's developed in your journey, and how God sees us is such an important part of why I think this book is important. Is there's something that's happening in our culture, in our school systems, and education, in life all around us, where people aren't being seen. And your experience here, you define coming out of a childhood of not being seen.
Yeah, I think that's the message definitely that I took last night, Dr. Rhonda, was those points in your timeline where you didn't feel any value because they just passed you through the grade, just said, oh yeah, you won't fail this class. And an outsider might think, oh, well, that would give you a lot of security to know you have a learning disability and you're not going to fail this class. But for you, it meant they don't have enough. They're not putting enough value on me to actually develop me. I thought that was
Such an important
incredible point, I think. But God gave me a pencil to me. Just that title means that God valued you in such a way and then put people in your life to value. I don't know, Sean, did you want to talk about the formative years at all or anything? What did you want to do?
Yeah, I'd like to, you took us on that journey a little bit on the formative years last night, where just a touch. Would you give a small outline of your formative years? And you were exiting high school, or in that window, a lot of change was happening. Would you be willing just to give us a short little?
Goodness, short little window. Like last night, what'd I say again? I have to think about it.
The raincoats was one.
Yes.
Oh yes, that was.
Yes. Goodness, there's so many different things that you're talking about in the moment of between when my mom left us and when I graduated from high school. And when my mom left, sorry, it's one of those
You don't
things
need to be sorry.
that I think about.
Yeah.
It's hard to process sometimes, even still. When my mom left, she left us with somebody who I thought was a nice person until her tone changed, because then she's responsible for kids she didn't expect to be responsible for, and behaviors that she didn't want in her own home. And I don't know that we fully comprehended that mom wasn't coming back. When they did pick us up and move us to another place, it was really different because I was really separated from my sisters, even in the same space. So we were in certain foster homes where they would be not very far away from me, but they would be locked, like they were downstairs and they have a child gate and they would be behind that gate. I could see them, but they were together, where I was at times locked in a high chair and someone was trying to get me to eat. My sisters really developed a really awesome bond, even though they still fight with each other. They drive each other crazy back and forth. They, through our childhood, spent a lot of time together. I spent a lot of time sort of secluded. A lot of that was my own doing because I didn't really understand social behavior and whatnot. We did have a foster mom who would have kept us, and she seemed to get it. There was a lot of soft corners in her room, a lot of places where, she seemed to care about whether or not I was comfortable. And then we moved back to my grandmother's house. And so my grandmother had a 4th grade education, but she was a really smart woman, if I can make that make sense.
Oh yeah.
There wasn't anything I think Miss Ethel couldn't do. to be fair. That woman could fix stuff. She could put stuff together. She could handle kids. And that meant if you needed a spanking, you were getting one. If you needed food, you were getting it. She took care of everybody. But she didn't know how to teach us how to read, and she couldn't tell us if we were good readers or not. She did read her Bible every night. And she did give us church. She allowed us to go with someone to go to church. But she wouldn't have been able to identify that I had learning disabilities. I think she knew something was not quite right with me every way else, right? Just difficult is the way I keep saying it as a kid, because it's a word that came around a lot. She's hard to please. You know, I didn't like certain food textures. I didn't like certain noises. I hated being in dresses. I would rip them apart. I was fighting constantly and getting in trouble and getting kicked out of school. And she would not have me tested for special ed. But every teacher I ran into, including teachers who looked like me, kept saying, "You'll never get a below a C in this class. I'm just going to keep passing you along." That's terrifying. It's excruciatingly terrifying. Because I knew at some point I was going to have to be out in the world, and my grandmother's not going to live forever. How do I make sure I have a job I can take care of bills with? Like, she's like, yeah, you can just keep working for the person she worked for as a maid, and you could take care of kids at the house, maybe be a foster mother. I've been taking care of the kids in some capacity, cooking or cleaning or hair and getting kids ready for school. And that was my before and after school, was at the house taking care of siblings or cousins or foster kids. I did not want to continue to do that, but I didn't think I had a choice. Mike Riley gave me an option. Now, Mike himself didn't understand that I had a disability. He knew something.
Tell us who Mike Riley is.
Mike Riley was my mentor at Colorado Uplift. But Mike knew something wasn't quite right. I don't know if he ever identified exactly what it was. But he just kept making me teach, or he'd give me a job, some kind of internship during the summer, right? You'll work in a bank this month. You'll work this company this month. You'll do this. He kept putting me in places where I was forced to be able to do something. But he gave me my first shot at teaching. The mentoring program gave me my first shot at teaching. I would fall back on that when my daughter was born. But to be fair, I had no idea what the trajectory of my life was going to look like. I had no idea where I was going to go to figure that out. I did try like a CNA program, because people were like, go to a tech school, or, you know. But I couldn't remember my numbers and hold them in my head. I did not want a patient's life to be dependent on that. But also, I couldn't pass the CNA test. I'd gone to school, copied my textbooks cover to cover every single week, and I couldn't remember the information to be able to pass the CNA exam in Colorado. That is frustrating. That is $6,000 I have to figure out how to pay back. That, to me, felt wasted because I couldn't do that job well. I could care for patients. I could show up really well for all of my internships because I loved my patients, right? You just love them. But I couldn't grow in that profession because I didn't have the appropriate skill set to do it. Academically, on paper. And I couldn't write good cliff notes for somebody to come in after me and go, oh, I understand what she just did with a patient. How do you articulate that when you don't know what your disability actually is? So that's what it felt like coming out of high school, them handing me an empty diploma that said, hey, you're ready to take on the world. And it was all a huge lie.
That's amazing. That story that you have coming up to the point where you recognize that you're in trouble, in a sense. I'm fascinated by something in maybe it's in between the lines a little bit, is your view of why did God allow you to go through this? Why did you have to suffer in this way? Is that a question you've had to wrestle with and work through in your journey a bit? The big why question I'm really interested in.
You know, God is interestingly amazing. And there's not a person in the Bible I can think of that didn't go through a struggle.
Yeah.
And every time they went through the struggle, it was for a reason.
Yeah.
God was building something in them.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what he was building in me.
Yeah.
I didn't know who my people were. Sorry. It's weird. My mom had a favorite. It was my sister. She always her favorite. She took very good care of me. Almost too good a care. So that by the time I was 15 and pregnant, everyone was taking care of her. And they were gifting her with furniture so she could be set up in her own place. She didn't learn a skill. My mom favored her out of the ability to have a skill. In everything that God did for me, it was to remind me that if I am favored by the wrong people, I'm going to be in a worse state. I need to be favored by him enough to know he's building a skill in me and he's going to deliver me to a place later on. I just have faith that he could do that. But it was from seeing what happened to the people who were around me who man favored more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, man favored them more and didn't develop them. And so they stayed stagnant and their lives took a much harder turn. My life felt hard, but I was learning things along the way that I knew some way he was going to do something with it. I just didn't know how. It was the lack of understanding the how. The trying to get people to understand when they would say, just go do it. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yeah. That's great to some degree, but you got to know you have bootstraps. You got to know the straps go up, not to the side. You got to be able to do some of those things. You got to not have a hole in the bottom of your shoe. I didn't understand those things. And so I had to try to pray every day about, is there an opportunity that'll teach me how to do something when I get the job? That if it had paid training next to it, I was going to try to see if I can get in there. Paid training, we'll try it. Now, Uplift did try to get me into college, and they were successful. But the lady who was doing my intake was just like, write down whatever it is about why you want to go to school. I know there were multiple misspellings. I know I didn't complete certain sentences. I don't even think she read it, although I worked really hard to give her something that would say I actually filled out a college application, which I didn't quite do on my own. And then I got there and realized I can't really write a paper. I'm struggling to understand what's on the computer screen for this computer class that they want me to be able to take. I don't know how to socialize with the people that are around me because I'm in a completely different culture on campus. And my grandmother and my family stopped talking to me. So I had nobody other than Mike Riley and Colorado Uplift who were familiar to me. I have to share something I didn't share in the book. I was assaulted on campus. So I left. And I went back into the arms of an abusive boyfriend who I then married. We had a daughter. And I couldn't keep being in that situation with her. I felt like the worst mom ever. So when I finally did get away and start trying to teach her how to do the stuff I didn't know how to do, I'm so sorry.
You don't need to be sorry.
That's when you really start to depend on God.
Yeah.
And everything really starts to make some sense. That it wasn't just about you, that you had to understand. If I didn't understand what it was like to struggle with reading and writing, when my daughter threw that pencil at my head, I wouldn't have even thought twice about what she was doing. I probably would have spanked her and been like, you don't throw things at your mom. And I'd have moved on. But when she did that, and it was so unlike her personality, that's when I was like, okay, God, everything I went through, so I understood my kid. I didn't get that before.
Yeah.
I thought I knew he was doing something.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to be about my own life.
Wow.
I didn't know it was going to be about my own children. But watching her not be able to make the letter A without a tantrum, something inside me said, God was preparing you for this moment right here. And that's when we kind of got to work. And that's sort of the premise on where this book kind of jumps off and gets started. Sorry.
Oh, that's awesome.
Good Lord.
Yeah,
You just
thanks
shared.
for sharing.
You just shared. You connected some dots of how you were able to love others because of your own brokenness, your journey of brokenness, and not because you had a disability, because of your journey of brokenness. This idea of you weren't seen, but you were able to see your daughter, which is such an amazing gift to be able to see your daughter and then to walk on. Because what you shared last night at the gala was how at a later point in time, your daughter, I think it's the same daughter, but
Yes.
that inspired you. Like you
Oh, yeah.
shared how
She's totally a bully.
yeah,
That's
She's
but
totally a
she's
bully.
challenged you now and helped shape your journey. So this person who you were able to see and to love, and not just because I share those same. If my kid threw a pencil at me, they would have got it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't see myself. Yeah. And the fact that God was able to let you see yourself so you could see her and then love her where she was at, that's an amazing gift.
Yeah, and would you describe that as like a breakthrough moment for you?
For both of us.
And in what way was it a breakthrough moment?
It was because I recognized behavior, I think, for the first time. When I was growing up, I understood I was having behavior because of the reactions of other people. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, it just, you see people react to you. You may not understand socially why there's just some tension or whatever. But a lot of people react at me with sort of tension. And so, my daughter was, as an infant, one of the most polite and amazing and calm, babies. She just, if you put a television in front of her and let a newscaster go, she'd think you were talking to her. And she'd just talk back. She'd just, I could lay her anywhere and get stuff done around the house. She was just a good is the wrong term, because there are lots of infants that cry and they're good infants. Yeah. But she was more of just a calm baby.
Easy.
Who
not
became,
difficult.
Yeah, just easy. The only time it became interesting is she never ran out of energy. So she was just constantly active. And I was just like, yeah, it's kids. Kids are constantly active. But she was like, and I was like, she never stops talking until she's asleep. And even then, she's talking in her sleep. Like, she's just constantly on the go. So, but it wasn't on the go in a bad way. It was just, that's just who she was. And then when I put the pencil in her hand and I said, you're going to write the letter A, and I showed her and I tried to get her to write it, and immediately she became almost a different person. Immediately. She was combative. She was crying. She was screaming. She was throwing the pencil. It was a completely different human that I was looking at. that was the acknowledgement to me that there was behavior behind all of the actions, because I found myself going, what? And just, what did you just do? That was what I felt like people would say when they were around me a lot. It was just, you could just see that. Ugh. And so
you could relate to.
yeah.
Wow.
So I just told her, I said, I'm going to give us both a break, but we're coming back and you are absolutely going to do this. We got work to do. And she was just like, no. And I was like, yes, I'm going to let you go downstairs. I'm going to let you watch TV, you do whatever you want. But tomorrow we're starting again, and we are going to start again. I'm your teacher, whether you like it or not, and you're my student. Mm-hmm. And once we realized that we couldn't get rid of each other, then we really started working on how do we help her move from one step to the next. But it wasn't until I understood about her auditory processing that I realized that I had been giving her too many commands in writing the letter A, that's what set off the behavior. Because, I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, and she's thinking pick up pencil. Put pencil down on paper. Put the pencil down on the paper, and then strike up, strike down. I'd already given her too many instructions. She was good with 2. And I just didn't realize that. So we had a lot of give and take and a lot to learn, but that's when I realized the behavior that I had as a kid, people doing things that were triggering my disabilities to manifest or causing me to respond physically and emotionally, was what was happening with my kid when it came to her disabilities.
You must be really good at reading a room.
I'm accused of not. A lot. Did you not know people were getting bored, Rhonda?
Nobody was bored last night, I gotta tell you. That's interesting. I think the question, like you mentioned, I'm going to use the word triggers and see if that, because the way our brain stores information, we learn in a way that I think it's, what do they call the memory side, where it's not basically conscious. Our brain starts storing information about certain events. And so as people tense up around you, your brain automatically tells you something. And so it knows what's going on before our consciousness knows that there's a problem. Our brain starts acting, and we work into protection or triggers that we didn't even know were happening. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that you're able to start taking the things how your daughter's responding to you and see and go down to the level of detail you were at to actually know, like figuring out, hey, we've given too many commands here in something that seems such a simple, like that's only one command, right? No, actually there's a lot of process that get to what I was asking her to do. That takes a level of, I think that's the reason why you're saying learn how to read a room is like the level of observance. Is that the right? Observance. I can't even say the word right. What it takes to get to understanding that is something that's exceptional, to be able to see that.
Well, I didn't see it at first. Children's Hospital finally did a workup on but they finally did a workup on her. And so what they asked her to do, which is where this other situation came about, they asked her to run down and touch a clown's nose on the wall 3 times and run back. My kid ran down, touched the clown's nose, ran back. Ran down, touched the clown's nose, ran back. Ran down, touched the clown's nose, ran back, and was about to run down again. And they were like, that's good. And I was like, what was that? And they're like, she heard 2 of the 3 commands in the right sequence. So she didn't hear touch it 3 times and then come back. She heard run down 3 times, touch the clown's nose. So the order was different than the way that they said it out loud. And so that had me thinking about all the times I'd given her different instructions and totally screwed her up. Not because she's incapable of doing it, but because I gave her too much at one time and her mind was not processing that. So we built on that. We built on how she can process information and what that looks like. But that was a combination. Like I noticed the first time. Now I'm going back and saying, let me correct how I said that. We had that issue. I can now understand that what I did was incorrect for her. But that was because Children's Hospital showed me in one small test how I was triggering my daughter by the number of instructions I was giving her.
That's amazing. You wrote in your book, and that was something that I wanted to talk about today. It was in this space of, it's a little bit in the space where you're at, because you said, use the word messed up, but you were doing things that you didn't even know you were doing. But one of the things that I was taken back by in a good way, it was you took ownership for, once you figured out you took ownership with your kids for the things that you had done, and you recognized where you had made mistakes or even where you were wrong. And that spoke to me. How did you get to the point where you were able to take ownership for you and say, hey, this is my part? We do this in recovery. We do an inventory sheet, and the last part is my part. What's my part? Yeah. And it sounds like you got to what's my part, and we're ready to say, hey, I'm going to go make amends. That's the term we would use in recovery language. What brought you to that point, and how did you get to where you were willing to see it as your part? Because some of what you're sharing is just ignorance. You just didn't know. It wasn't that you were being a bad mom. You didn't understand. And then once you gained understanding, you started correcting course immediately. But I heard something a little bit more humble than that in the things that you wrote and saw. It was that you also saw where you didn't act in a way that was always best, and you had to take ownership for that and make amends or apologize. Yeah. How did you get to that point?
Well, I'm a really rigid person. I really am. It has to be one way, or I prefer it to be one way. My husband and my kids remind me often that it's not one way, but I feel like it should be. And so when they were growing up, I was pretty rigid. But I want to go back a little bit further. My father had a lot of reasons to be angry with a lot of people for stuff that happened when I was growing up. And part of that was in what I thought was his abandonment of me and my siblings. And I came to learn later that wasn't actually the truth. That's not the way that happened. But when I was 15, my dad came to visit, and I was just so angry with him. And I had written a poem about him, and it wasn't a nice poem. It was, but it was my way of just handling the hurt that I felt like he had caused me. And my father got down on his knee and he apologized to me. He's the only adult who's ever apologized to me as a kid in my entire life.
What a gift.
It was an amazing gift. But when I got diagnosed with autism, we had an idea of the learning disabilities, but when I finally got diagnosed with autism, and I'm sitting there talking with the therapist about, just behaviors that I think are just typical, and she's talking to my husband, and he's like, that's atypical. And and then just seeing his face as she's just sort of walking through, are you seeing this behavior, this behavior, this behavior? And he's like, yep. And I'm like, really? I do that? And it was really hard. So I had to think about what it must have been like for my kids. Like, could you imagine? Mom, I want to go outside and play. No. Why not? Because I said so. Go over there and get your work done because it's 5 o'clock and we do work at 5 o'clock. We don't go outside and play at 5 o'clock. That's our work time. I gave them no room, like no air to breathe. It's just, this is the schedule. You're going to be on this schedule. And we'll go outside when it's a different time because that's a part of the schedule. I had to apologize. I owed it to them to do that. Not because I abandoned them or didn't ever tell them that I loved them, but it's hard to live with a parent who is just so rule bound. Yeah. Even if it's part of how they function in their disease, right? People don't like to call autism a disease. They prefer to call it a disability, but those words sometimes for me are sometimes interchangeable. Yeah. So But what I'm really saying is I'm autistic and I had certain rules and regulations, and this is the way I do it. That's the way it's going to be. That's the way it needs to look. I didn't realize the impact that was having on my kids. And so I did go back and apologize to them. And I've been able to speak with at least some of them about how they feel about that apology. And they're just so forgiving. Like, oh, Mom, that's just who you are. We get it. But I know they didn't get it when they were little. They could say that they did, but
Yeah.
I was pretty hard on them.
We normalize our childhoods. And,
Yeah.
The same way you said, hey, this seemed like normal behavior, they normalized it also.
Right.
You gave them a gift. I just want to affirm that by apologizing that you gave them the same gift your dad gave you.
I certainly hope so.
What did it feel like to get clarity like that, and for your husband and for everyone, like, oh, this is what I've been struggling with?
Like I said, it feels like I could breathe for the first time. Having someone write out, these are some of the things that you're coping with, and these are some better ways to cope with them. It's freeing in a way, because I have been doing a lot of things that were unnecessary in an effort to try to cope with the stuff that's not going to change. And so, like, for instance, I've become artistic. I paint to think. Before that, I was copying every textbook I had cover to cover to be able to remember what I needed to learn to be able to pass the test, then forgetting it later on. When I started painting, I could think. Now, had someone come along earlier in my life and said, hey, did you know you could paint to think and that might help you? That would have probably been a game changer.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. If I hadn't been writing my textbooks cover to cover, I wouldn't have known how to write a curriculum for my kids. And I wouldn't probably be here today talking to you. But it was that writing piece where I was putting things on paper every single day, thinking about what the letters look like, thinking about what the sounds look like, thinking about how I'm going to remember it, that I was able to build strategies to help my kids when I was like, oh, they're not getting something. I need to sit down and do it. So while I would love to say I wish I would have gone back and learned that sooner, I'm glad it came when it did. But it freed me up to now I don't feel like I have to do those things anymore to be able to remember information. I just go to my art room, I paint, I come out of it, I have clarity. I can have conversations with my husband without, what I call sometimes like a stopgap. Everything gets so congested on the inside, and my disabilities keep me from using the right words. And my autism is shutting me down from being able to engage in conversation. If I go out and I paint and I come back, I can then engage in conversations with my husband that I was struggling to have before. And he knows it. Like it's as simple as, did you eat today? When you're hangry and,
Oh, yes. Perfect
and
example.
nothing
Yes.
comes out. He knows the difference between when I'm hangry and when I just, do you need to go paint? Like, he doesn't say it like that, but
You need to go paint.
He says it with the go paint. Then you'll know, right?
more, it's just like, he's like, hey,
I got the paint supplies out for you, honey.
what do you
like to paint, and what do you feel when you are painting?
To be fair, I honestly, when I started painting, I didn't know what I was going to put on canvas. I would just get the paints, sit them out around the canvas, and I would lay out canvases that were anywhere from 4 foot to 15 foot in front of the garage, just lay them all out. And I would just get out there with the paint, and I would just let whatever was coming out come out. And then I could think again. And the painting made sense to me because I had gone through the process, right? Before, I didn't know where the clog was, and then by the time I'm done painting, I know where the clog is, and I know how to access it, and it makes sense. So I am now trying to learn how to paint what someone sends me, and it's still very difficult because when you're looking at something that somebody's like, I love this picture, make it the best painting ever. And you're like, that's a great picture.
That's not what I do.
That's not what I do. So I'm learning a little more about technique and how to make things look the way that I want on the canvas. But really, when I need to process information, I don't go out there with an idea in mind. I just go out there, I pull out a canvas, I pull out as many colors as I can actually, see or get, and I just work until I'm done. Or work until I don't hate it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can think clearly.
I know with cancer patients, they use painting as a therapy.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in the brain that happens that's very helpful for a cancer patient. So they actually, in different cancer centers, will have an area for that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I know we're going to run short on time, and I'm
Yeah.
not looking to cut you off either. So,
No.
but I have a couple of questions that I wanted to dive in. One, I pre-warned you. You talked about your dad for a few minutes, and that I think it's the last page and a half of your book or so that you put him in, and you tell the story that you told earlier at 15, where he's the first adult who told you apologized for, but you shared more than that, and that was in the book. You shared that he passed when you were 30, and I'm assuming he was in his 50s or something, maybe
56.
56, yes, when he passed, and he passed from cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that just from our conversations that this was a man of great meaning in your life from that 15 to 30, those 15 years, and that you shared a little bit with me about feeling even a little bit of, maybe I'll put words around it, and they weren't the words you used, but a disappointment with God for the fact that you only had such a short window with this man of great influence in your life. And so, and my question is, how you grieved his loss, because this person, I have a sense, is a lion of a man now in your heart and mind of influence. And so, and grieving is a really important part of the journey in life. And you've had to grieve the loss of both of your parents, but it seems like your dad gets just a short window in your book, and that's the reason why I asked you if you would write a sequel. And that's obviously it's just me prompting, but not because there's anything that it's just I told you that I think you have a lot of your dad in you now. The wisdom and those items of forgiveness. The only way you could be here today is your ability to learn how to forgive and process and love in such a greater way, which is what you've described as your dad. That's why I see it in you. And so as I think about that, I'll go back to my question. How did you grieve his loss? Such a man of great influence in your life that you didn't know for so long, that you were so angry with. And then I sense there was a deep daughter-father love that was there at the end.
Well, after that moment with my dad when he apologized, we went on a walk, a long, long walk. And he just shared life with me. And anytime he would come back, we would walk. Hours and hours of walking. I can walk. It doesn't matter how hot it is outside. I can walk. Because I just think about my father. Mm-hmm. When he first passed, I struggled. I think I was probably the angriest I've been in a long time. And it was really kind of hard for me to be around people who had their parents with them, but didn't respect or show them any kind of love. It was really hard because Dad meant a lot. And it's not like my mom didn't. She was struggling. And I did have pockets of good moments with her, but not like with my father.
He saw you.
Yes, very clearly. So when I think about Dad, I still grieve the fact that he's gone. But he himself told me, I know I'm leaving this earth. You have two things that'll make me proud. Always remind people when they do something good for you. Always. And don't expect a thank you. Like, you always just, when someone does something that means something to you, tell them what they did, why it was important to you, and you just move on. You just move on and help others. You got to do something better with your life. And you don't know this, but when my dad told me that, I was there to tell him, Dad, you will take the cancer treatment and you will get better because I need you in my life. And he yelled at me. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm not doing that. I'm in my right mind for the first time. And I'm not changing that for a couple of extra months. And that was really hard. But he was just resolved. He's like, I've made my peace with God. God knows where my heart is. And it's my turn to go home. And you're going to have to accept that. I had a hard time accepting that. So now I get to see him in our grandkids, my grandkids, his great grandkids. I get to see him show up in small ways all the time. But I try my best to honor him every opportunity I get. I'm like, Dad would have wanted me to do that. So I do it that way. But it is still very hard to miss him.
That's a great share. Yeah.
Thanks.
I sense the, you know how special you were to him and even to God because of that relationship. So what a gift. But I like the fact that you're saying I'm still grieving it. It's not that I just have finished off and I've left it there. You still honor him and you're not dishonoring your mom either. You just recognize the gifts that you've had in life from these relationships. I'll let, if you have other questions, but I have one more question that I want to ask about. It's a question I ask you a lot, Peter, in your cancer journey. And you struggled at first about, hey, how do you want to claim this? But it's like you obviously had disease, disability, autism. And now when you look at your life, would you trade that? Meaning recognizing that hardship and what it meant for your life, would you trade that or take the life that you have now? And I ask that it's a little bit of a hypothetical, but I'm asking because of you talked earlier in this podcast about seeing what God had done in the hardship or in that hardship, and that maybe the other life would have been too easy and you might have missed something. But I'm curious your perspective on it now as you look at it, and it's not something you can fully answer, but just how you think about that now.
That's an interesting question. And like the separation of like somebody being with autism versus somebody being autistic. I don't know what it's like to be able to separate one from the other.
Fair, yeah.
But what I will say is I think being autistic has helped me to be a better special education teacher. It helped me to be a better principal. I think it helps me in a lot of ways. There are times where it's a struggle, right? I have really good friends who spend time with me, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Where'd she go? She's just gone. Like she's not with us on this deck, and we're all enjoying the sunset." And now they're like, "Oh, okay, I know why. She got too full and she had to go. She needed to go have some time." So I know that there are times where people will say, "We kind of missed you in this moment." I've had family, say something very similar. It's not that I don't want to have a more fuller time with them. I just don't. I don't know how I can be something other than what God created me to be.
Yeah.
To make that any different. I try now to be more intentional when I am with my kids, when I am with someone I care about. I'm not always good at it. So, being that sometimes I don't look people in the face, there's a lot of recognition that doesn't happen. And so people are like, such and such because, no. So my sister, my middle sister, will be out someplace. And she's like, "Oh, look, there's John." I'm like, "John? John who?" It's your cousin John. "What? Yeah, that's your cousin John." who's my cousin John? John. And I'm like, John? Who's John? Your cousin. I was like, we have a cousin named John? And she's like, Rhonda, remember when we used to play with this person all the time? And I'm like, no. And I truly don't recall. I don't remember because I don't remember their face. Because I didn't realize until the diagnosis that I didn't actually look people in the eye when I talked to them. I was somewhere else paying attention to what they were saying, but not looking them in the face. So there are a lot of relationships that I miss because I can't recognize faces. That's why when I would go to a donor event, I try to be more intentional, look people in the eye, oh, hi. But there's so many faces that I need several introductions to be able to remember them. That's the stuff that I wish I had a coping mechanism for.
Yeah.
Because I hear people's stories and people feel compelled to tell me their stories. I want to remember their names with their stories. So when I focus on their face, I miss hearing their stories. So I rather focus on their stories, but then I miss their face. And so it's sort of a back and forth there because you really want to honor people. And then sometimes it's harder because some people really need you to look them in the eye because nobody's looked them in the eye before. And you have students that are like that. No one's ever looked them in the eye and had a conversation. And so you have to look them in the eye. And so then my face starts to contort because I'm trying to also remember what they're saying because this person really needs you to look them in the eye and they need you to hear their story. Those are the things I wish I could do better. Those are the things I kind of, at the end of the day, when you're like, is there anything you had a question about at the end of the day that you would go back and change? That's the thing I wish I could say, God, is that, there's one thing I could fix. Could it be that thing? But if I didn't have that thing and I didn't know that thing, then for every kid who says the same issue I have, who do they talk to and relate to that understands and gets it? So do I accept the gift that God gave me of not being able to do that thing because now I can be relational to the person who has the same problem?
Wow.
Or do I trade that off with, now I don't have that issue anymore, but I hear all these stories and I can match the face with the name. So that's sort of the stuff I play back over.
That's such a great share. Yeah, Peter, do you have anything you want to add to questions you want? That I love that. So what I'd like to do is, you brought so much wisdom and grace and understanding to us being here for our big gala and what you wrote in the book. And so I would just want to encourage anybody that's just heard this conversation to get this. But God gave me a pencil by Dr. Rhonda Richmond. I think you will be blessed, and there's so much richness in your life here and your learnings. Is there anything you want to share as we close out that hasn't been covered that you think is really important? Just you don't have to, but if there's something that, hey, you didn't ask me about this, I really like to share this one thing. The ball's in your court again. But
I just want to encourage anybody out there who's struggling. The tools that you have in front of you are the tools that can help you. People tend to think, I need to get the supercomputer, or I need to get all this other stuff. I need a whole lot of income coming in. We started with a piece of paper and a pencil. And that's really our primary tools, is a piece of paper and a pencil. You don't need a lot more than that to get started and to build yourself up. So I just want people to take some of the mystery out of it. Because people think when you wrote a book, oh, everything's done, it's gone, and you've healed from it, and you're all fine, and you're not. But also they think that they can't do it. Like somehow you're an anomaly. Everybody has the ability to do what I did. Every single person. I'm not any more special than anybody else. God made us all the same. I just happen to pay attention enough to go, okay, there's something there I can use to be able to help me out. I just want people to think that way more often because everybody can achieve it. It just takes a little bit of elbow grease.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I'm just grateful for everything that
Yeah.
you've shared today. That was a great share that in there too. So
Yeah.
we hope everybody enjoyed listening to Dr. Rhonda share her life in this book. And that's all I have.
Okay. Thank
Blessings.
you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, blessings.